Well, hello to all of you tabletop gamers out there, and especially those who like the very, very difficult cooperative games. If you are one of those people out there, I hope you have discovered the game Flashpoint Fire Rescue. And this game is by Indie Boards and Cards, and it will definitely give you a challenge if that is what you are looking for. So that's the game that I'm going to do a strategic analysis of today. So yeah, I guess I will start out with my usual disclaimer, and that is that this is not a review or a tutorial. So I'm going to assume that you know the rules, because I'm just going to jump right into the strategy of this game and how to win. So if you're looking for something different, YouTube, I'm sure, can provide it for you. But so yeah, like I said, this game is super hard. If you play on the hardest difficulty level, which is what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to focus mostly on the heroic difficulty level of this game. It's one you will, the first time you play, you're going to lose. You're going to lose badly. You probably won't save anybody in the house, and it's going to be a little depressing for you. So it will even take quite a few games before you're able to really compete with the heroic difficulty level. And I have now played dozens and dozens and dozens of times over the last month, and I found some really critical strategies that you need to use in order to have a chance at winning at the heroic difficulty level. So I'm going to go through those. But yeah, basically, you know, you're a team of firefighters, you're trying to get into this house, this burning house, and save, you need to save 7 victims before the house collapses on you and kills everybody inside. So that's the premise of the game. And yeah, I really like you. I want you to survive when you go into this house. I want you to come home to your family. And so I'm going to give you some tips now on how to increase your chances of surviving. So next I'll go through the team that you will start with. And of course, I can't just say you're going to start with this team every single time, because your initial starting team really does depend on what's out on the board. So things like, you know, are the points of interest in the center of the building, far away from the doors? Same thing with like hazmats. Are they in the center? Are they close to the doors? These things are going to, and do you have big groups of fire? You know, so a bunch of fire in one quadrant where you're just going to want to sit with the driver-operator role and just take out all that fire? Or is it just really spread out, where you're going to need your people to get in there, get to those spots and take out that fire? So a lot of things like that are really going to change who your initial roles are going to be for your team. But there are some that are definitely better than others, and I'm going to go through each role and talk about kind of strengths and weaknesses, and when you use each one in each situation. So of course the first one is going to be the fire captain. And this is an awesome role because he has the base 4 action points, which is very helpful. But then the 2 action points that he gets free to command others on the team it's just so helpful, because usually one of the people on the team is in a more critical situation than the other team members. So you can make sure to give them an extra 2 action points by, you know, maybe moving them a rescuer closer to a POI, point of interest, or, you know, a hazmat technician over closer to a hazmat material. Something where you can just get someone really important to an important place to get their job done. So those 2 action points are oftentimes more valuable than the 4 action points that the fire captain has to use for themselves. So fire captain, use them pretty much anytime you have more than like a 2 or 3 player game going. If you have a 2 or 3 player game going, then it doesn't help as much to have someone move the other player, you know, or one of the other 2 players. It's not as critical. You usually have kind of a job to do where one person needs to be the rescuer, one person needs to take out the fire, and maybe, you know, if there's a 3rd person, then they're there to, you know, do whatever else is needed. So yeah, so anytime you have a 4 or more player game, this guy's pretty much required. So then the next one, the CAFS firefighter, obviously extremely good at just getting to fire, well, not getting to, but putting out fire out in the building. So they don't have a hose that they're going to use from outside of the building or anything. They actually do have to walk to the fire and put it out, but they have the free extinguishing points that will help them do it very quickly, very efficiently. So this person, if I were to say one person is going to be on every single team, I would say it would probably be this person. Because you're always going to need to put out fire, and this person just does it so efficiently. So you usually send this person in, they just walk around the house and put out fire wherever they see it, and they're just going to stay in the house and keep doing that for the entire game. The rescue specialist is nice because they also get some free action points, and this time for moving, so they get the free movement points, plus they still get the 4 base just general action points, which is pretty good too. It's pretty annoying though that they have to pay twice as much to extinguish fire, so they're pretty much never going to be doing that. They'll just be going to points of interest, identifying them, and then if they're victims, get them out of the house. And that's really going to be their only job. They'll probably need someone to clear a path for them to those victims. Occasionally, something will be blocked and they'll need the CAFS firefighter to do it, or someone else to just get a path for them, because putting out fire for twice the action points is very inefficient. You don't want to do that very much. But they're good at getting somewhere quickly because they can move so far, and then carrying them out, victims out to using those free movement action points. So yeah, that guy's pretty good. Next is the imaging technician, and they are a tempting role to use on turn 1 because they can sit either in or near the fire engine and just identify all the POIs that are out on the board to start with, and that you would want to use them if the POIs are far away from the door, any doors, so it's going to take you a couple turns to actually get into the house, get to those POIs, identify them, and then if they're victims, to get them out of the house. So if you can just identify them from right away on turn 1 for 1 action point, then you should do that, because that can save you so many other action points in trying to get there and getting to possibly even a false alarm. So it just helps you strategize a little better earlier on and hopefully get some of those false alarms out of there. So good for turn 1, but not something you'd want probably on turn 1 if you have POIs that are very close to the doors, where you can just get to them on turn 1 anyway with a different type of role to identify them. So it's it's when once in a while, even in the middle of a game, if you're near a fire engine, you might even change roles to them to just get them for 1 turn, and then identify the POIs and then strategize based on whether they're false alarms or not. So yeah, it's pretty good, but they're usually just kind of you use them for 1 turn and then switch to someone else. That's usually what you're going to do with this guy. The Generalist is another good one. Just having the straight 5 action points, that's really good, because you have people like the rescue specialist who they're paying twice as much to put out fire. They really have to just have their one job of getting to a victim and bringing them out of the house, and that's really all they can do. But if you have someone like the Generalist who has 5 action points, which is a lot, they can put out fires, they can rescue people, they can carry hazmats out of the house, they can do anything that's really needed at any point. So you'll usually have a Generalist in a group if you have 4 or 5 or 6 people in the game to play, because they need plenty of people, and Generalists can really help out with that. Sometimes you'd even have them in a 4-player game. It's a tempting one to switch to, like if you have an imaging technician to begin with, to switch to a Generalist later, or like a driver operator to switch to them later. I like to keep them out there as the role that I'm going to switch into next, after whatever role does their job. So the driver operator is also another one where you would oftentimes just take them for the first turn or 2 or 3. If you have a lot of fire to begin the game in a specific quadrant, you can just bring them out there even before being one of the first couple firefighters to take their turn, so they can just try to use the hose and try to do as much damage as possible to a quadrant. You pretty much always... Okay, the only person who should ever use the hose on the fire engine should really be the driver operator, because they have the ability to re-roll the die, either die or both dice. So they are the only ones who should use that, and honestly, the gun isn't that great, and it's so inconsistent. You never know what you're going to get from it. So I don't use it very much at all. But just yeah, if I start the game with a quadrant that's really burning down, then I'll move the fire engine to that spot, start with the driver operator, and take care of it. Occasionally, in the middle of a game, if I somehow let a quadrant just get out of control, then I'll try to get someone into the fire truck, switch to the driver operator, and use the hose on it. So, but yeah, it's not one that I will frequently use. Lastly, the Hazmat Technician, who is not the most flashy role in the game. You look at some of the other ones like the Fire Captain and the Rescue Specialist, so like you're fighting fire or you're commanding firefighters, or you've got like kittens and dogs and people that you're carrying out of a burning building. And then you have the Hazmat Technician, who's just like carrying in a big snowsuit, carrying like these hazardous materials and kind of setting them outside, or just messing around with his like lab kit trying to disable this hazardous material. So not the most flashy one, and one that you don't need in some of the easier difficulties, but once you get to heroic, this role is critical on your starting team, because what you have to do in heroic is you have to save all these people fast enough before the fire gets out of control and probably the house collapses on you. So the hazmat, disabling the hazmats, one, prevents explosions, because then when fire moves over to a hazardous material, it doesn't explode. Plus, the hotspot is placed on the explosion, so you, one, get rid of an explosion, which will probably damage a wall or two. Then you also get rid of a hotspot, which will probably come up in the dice roll in the remainder of the game at some point, and will cause you to have to roll again somewhere else. So that it's one that's it doesn't have a lot of short-term reward, but long-term it does, and it's critical in the heroic difficulty to have a Hazmat Technician. Once you get rid of the hazardous material in the house, then definitely this person should make their way towards the fire truck so that they can change into a different role. Maybe switch over to the Generalist or someone else. So, but yeah, I guess that is it. So that's your team. I hope it helps you decide which ones you want to use to start with and then change to later in the game. So now we're going to move on to the early part of the game, what you want to do to begin with. So when you start a new heroic game, you're going to roll to put all the fire and the hazardous materials and hotspots and stuff out on the board. So when it's all said and done, you're going to usually have around 20 or so spots that have that kind of crap out there that you need to take care of. So those your first priorities then for your team are going to be to get the hazardous materials out of the house so that they don't cause explosions and create additional hotspots for you right away. So get them out of the house or disable them with the Hazmat Technician. And then also you just need to put out that fire as much as possible. The less fire that you have out there, the less explosions are going to happen from that and from shockwaves, and the less shockwaves that are going to occur. So those are going to be your first priorities. And so to help you do that, the next thing I'm going to talk about is how to prioritize which fire to go after. So throughout the course of the game, you're going to often be faced with the decision of which fire do you want to put out. You have a certain amount of action points, they're limited, so you need to use them in the most efficient way possible so you can make your advanced fire phase as safe as you possibly can. So there are a few things that you need to be concerned with. You don't want, if you can avoid it, you don't want fire next to fire, you don't want fire next to points of interest, you don't want them next to firefighters, you don't want them next to hazardous materials, and one that's easy to forget is you don't want them near undestroyed walls. So those are the things that you will need to keep in mind as you're trying to decide which fire to put out. So another situation too that you can try to do, which is a little is kind of interesting. It's a kind of an advanced strategy. If you're looking at a bunch of fire and you're trying to figure out which ones you want, what you want to put out, because you're probably only going to be able to put out one or two in a turn, just because you won't have enough action points to do any more. So if you can get it into kind of a staggered pattern, what the goal is really, you're trying to reduce the impact of an explosion. If one of the current pieces of fire explodes, then you need to look at the adjacent tiles to see what will happen if it does explode. Is it going to create shock waves? I hope not. You know, is it going to kill a point of interest, a possible point of interest? I hope not there too. So that's what you're looking at. So if you can form kind of a staggered pattern, as you can see here, so like if you have a 2x3 set of fire area that you're looking at to try to take care of, if you can keep fire just on like the 1 1 2 2 3 1 spots, then if any of those were to be targeted during the advanced fire, they would explode and they wouldn't cause shock waves. They would add fire to some of the open spots, but it would reduce the impact, reduce the damage that will be done by them. So that's kind of one thing that you can try to do. But really, I mean, it comes down to just visualizing what's going to happen if the advanced fire targets these spaces. So which ones can you get rid of to reduce that impact? So that is important. So another thing is whether or not to open or close, keep doors open or closed. And it's pretty obvious. I don't really need to go into it in too much detail, but you know, if the door's closed, you know, then you can keep smoke from turning into fire. So opening it might place fire next to smoke, which would turn that smoke into fire, which is a bad idea. If you're about to go through that door, you might as well just keep it closed for now, save an action point, use it next turn to open that door next turn and go through it and use additional action points. So usually you want to wait outside a door before you go in and just save any action points that you would use to open it for next turn, because you're not really sure how you're going to use those. But I'll go into that action point saving and using and such a little bit later. Moving. This is an important part of the game, and obviously you want to move from point A to point B as quickly as efficiently as possible. You want to take the shortest path, but you also don't want to just move to move, I guess. If you don't absolutely need to move somewhere on this turn to like identify a point of interest, or you know, just if you aren't going to get to your destination this turn, if you can, save those action points for next turn and do them all at once, because you, from the current turn and the advanced fire phases in between this current turn and your next turn, things could change where you might want to slightly or even completely modify what you had planned to do. So save them if you can. Yeah, that's important. You might even, I mean, because it just might be a slight modification, like, you know, you're getting to the same squares, but you might take a left to get there instead of a right, so that you can identify a point of interest. You know, see if it's a false alarm and make sure everybody knows, you know, whether it is or whether it's a victim, so everybody can strategize a little better. So it's just kind of like one of those tiny little things that you do in a game that can actually make a pretty big difference overall. So yeah, save those when you can. Also with moving, be careful in a smaller among player game, like a 2-player or 3-player game, because if the 2 or 3 people move to the same like corner of the house or even the same side of the house, it's very easy for the other side to get out of control. Fire will spread there, nobody will be putting it out, you'll get explosions, you'll get shock waves, and before you know it, all the walls around there are going to be destroyed and you're going to lose the game. So that's what I'd say about moving. Alright, general strategies. So one of them being just to utilize your role's special ability. They're going to be better at accomplishing one specific task usually, unless they're the generalist. So make sure that you're focusing on that task and doing that task well, and not getting distracted by like saving people if you're the CAFS firefighter. Leave that to those who are good at it, who are made to do that. So yeah, pretty obvious. Another one is don't forget how important the spots next to undestroyed walls are as far as getting fire and hazmats away from them, because you'll often lose the game just because the whole house collapses before you can save everyone. So to extend your survivability as far as the house is concerned, you should extinguish fire next to that are next to walls, undestroyed walls. Move hazmats out of the house or disable them if they're next to walls. So that kind of stuff is really important. So it'll reduce the chances that you'll have an explosion that will destroy the wall or a shockwave that sends fire into the wall, damaging or destroying that wall too. So that'll help you survive a little bit longer, and it's very important. Another thing is just to know how many false alarms there are left in the game. In heroic mode there are 6. So they're right there on the board too. So it's not like a hidden thing, something you have to remember. It's sitting out there on the board. So just know that if you have 8 points of interest that are still unidentified, and you found 5 false alarms, you know that there's 1 false alarm left. So you have a 1 in 8 chance for each of those points of interest on the board of them being a false alarm. So like a 12.5% chance of each one being a false alarm when you go to it. And then of course, you have an 87.5% chance then that it's not a false alarm. So you can use those probabilities to decide if you want to switch to the imaging technician so that they can identify all the points of interest, or if you just want to assume that's going to be a victim, so you send your rescue specialist out to go get them and hope that it's not a false alarm. So yeah, then once in a while, the only other thing I wanted to say is that once in a while, at the end of the game, you need to just abandon all, if you're doing okay like on damage to the house, you can just abandon all like firefighting activities and just save the rest of the people. Sometimes you need to do that to just kind of focus completely on just saving your last remaining victim, so you get the 7 and you win the game. So once in a while, yeah, just be okay with that. Be okay with just forgetting completely about fire if you need to right at the end of the game to save the last victim or 2. So in conclusion, this is a tough game, like I said. Very, very challenging, which is one thing that I love about it. There's nothing that I'd rather do on a Friday night than play a game like this that's actually really going to challenge me and my friends, sit down at a table, and one that will actually make us think, and we'll have to together come up with a plan to win based on what the game throws at us. So I love this game. It's so much fun if that's what you're looking for. But yeah, super challenging. So you're gonna run into the you're gonna lose the game a lot. You're gonna lose it a lot, especially at the beginning while you're getting familiar with the best strategies to use. So when you start losing the game because the house collapses on you, make sure you focus more on not letting those walls get damaged and destroyed. If you lose the game by your victims dying, make sure you save them more quickly and keep fire away from them. So you just kind of have to start focusing more on a different area depending on where you're losing, and then you'll just kind of have to keep it's a delicate balance, and you're going to have to find that balance for you and your team and the way you choose to play the game. So that is my advice to you. But yeah, awesome game. I think that's pretty much it. You can check out my blog, theforbiddenlimb.com. You can find the text and image version of this. And then that's where you can find this video and videos and other text analysis on other games. And yeah, I guess that's it. So until next time, keep watching these videos. Let me know if you want a specific game to be for me to analyze it. But otherwise, until next time.